Okay, thank you. And I have to say, I think this every time I come to a conference, and we were talking with somebody about how many conferences we'd been to over the course of our gray-headed life. And it is just fun to see everybody, and it's hard to get around to see everybody. So I decided I'd start out my presentation by looking back in the left-hand corner and going, hello, 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 hello. So just consider hello from me for everybody. And I always have to start out with a joke. And I had one I was going to tell, but I ran across this one this morning. A cop pulls over a car full of nuns because they're going too slow. And he walks up to the driver and he says, "Sister, the speed limit on this highway is 55. Why are you going so slow?" And she says, "Well, I saw a lot of signs that said 41, not 55. And he said, "Oh, well, that's the road number." And she goes, "Oh, silly me, I am so sorry. I'll just try to be better." And he looks in the back seat and he sees these other nuns are in the back seat just shaking. And he said, "Well, what's wrong with your passengers?" And she goes, "Oh, don't mind them. We just got off of Highway 101. I like it. Okay, seen that slide before, some of you that have been here before. The settlement instructions are out on the website, as usual. We put them out there and then had to go, oops, we should have added something. So we also have added, in the last few days, the instructions for the Quietus Worksheet. So if you've all been good and pulled them up and have read them every night before you go to bed, we did add something to them. And we do ask every year, we say, please read the instructions. We should say read and follow the instructions. Although we also recognize that sometimes your tax software systems, you have to do things a little differently, but the gist of it all, we need to read and follow the instructions. And also, as we did a couple years ago, we added some instructions in there for the 49TC for the treasurer so that they know what they need to provide to you. And I ran across a little something the other day that I thought would be an example of someone who didn't follow instructions. That's what happens when you try to put somebody together that didn't follow the instructions. And I think some of us have felt that way when doing our settlement when things don't balance. This is nice up here. Brenda worked diligently getting your forms out on the FTP site. And if you don't have access to that, someone in your office should. That's where all of your excise reports go. And I think I've got on another slide the number for Tamitha Cooper at the BMV. Anytime you have an issue with the BMV report, Brenda alluded to, you need to contact the BMV on their excise. Okay? And also for those counties that have adjusted tax rates for circuit breaker exempt funds, we have emailed those forms to you as well. Oh, and as usual, we say, you need to use our forms. Now, there are some software companies that have provided us with their own forms, they're duplicates of ours basically, and we have given them the okay. So I didn't want for those counties to be concerned that, well, wait a minute, my software company provides this. They're quite well aware of what ones they are. Man, I'm short. And of course, those counties that have circuit breaker exempt funds, you need to use those adjusted rates to distribute your property tax. Those counties that have low operating levy freeze, you need to use those adjusted equivalency rates that were provided by DLGF to distribute and allocate your excise tax. And if you can find those, if you have a question, those forms are all out on the DLGF website. You just go out there, there's on the left-hand side, it says county information, click on that, click on your county, and then you'll look for the report. It says 2013 LOAT equivalency rates. And for most of the counties have some type of a LOIT property tax relief credit, and you need to distribute either 5/12 of the abstract amount or 1/2, and you'll get that other payment around the 1st of June. So if you want to do 1/2, which it's a whole lot easier to divide your abstract amount by 2, you can do so and distribute that money. If you have not been providing those amounts when you get your monthly distribution, you know, some counties go ahead and give those numbers to the treasurer every month. If you've not been doing that, you need to do that just as quickly as possible so the treasurer can get that cashiered into their system, and they will certify that on the 49 TC. Yay, 2008 and prior delinquent tax deduction sheet, no longer a requirement. Some counties are opting to continue to track that, and we have your sheets, so all you need to do is just shoot us an email and we'll make sure that you get that, because you need that information before you process your 102s. Excise tax allocation deductions, those little babies are going to keep moving until they change the law. The Form 105 Section A, based on some requests and just some common sense, we've made some changes to the form. If you've looked at it, I didn't list on there, you know, line 3 is the amount that the treasurer certifies to you for collections on the report. The next lines have kind of been changed, and lines, got them listed there. The way that worksheet works, you take the collected amount on line 3 and you subtract any of your pre-apportionment adjustments on 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now we know 4 is going to be a reduction for your refunds if you include those. We know line 5 for the 2008 and prior delinquent tax collected, the state's share, will go on that line, and it's going to be a reduction. And the late payment penalties, however, are going to be an increase. So the way that form works, you need to enter that. If it's going to be an increase in the apportionment, you enter it on our 105 as, I knew I was going to say that. You enter it as a negative because it's going to subtract it, which means it will add, okay? The old math, 2 negatives to get you to a positive. And then on line 7, those are those other miscellaneous adjustments, maybe something from a prior settlement, and it'll be the same thing. If you put it in there as a positive, it's going to reduce the amount to a portion. If you want it to increase, you'll have to put it on that line as a negative. Okay. Tax refunds can be, not required to be, included with this settlement. The 17 TC form did not change. Hopefully you've been keeping up on that. I know a lot of counties do. As soon as they start processing a refund, they enter it on the 17 TC form. But those will be required at December settlement, but only those if you choose to reduce your apportionments at June settlement by the 17 Ts. In December, you'll only do the ones since that time. You're not going to double dip. General fund would like it, but it's probably not a good idea. And then the other thing is, if on your 17 Ts, your refunds go back to like 2008 and prior, you may have state PTRC and homestead credit to account for on there. We don't give final approval of settlement until that money is sent into the state. It needs to be netted together. And you can send it in on one check, or as I will talk about later, you can send it in by ACH. The late payment penalty collections on the special assessments, which do not include conservancy districts and ditch assessments, the treasurer's going to receipt that in on her cash book and the other sources, and they will also certify it in Section 3 on the 49 TC in, I think it's column 29, and then also back on the first page down in the other collections portion. And let's see. The auditor, you guys are going to list that as a pre-apportionment adjustment on line 6 in the 102. Now, excise tax, we're kind of hitting a lot on excise tax today because there have just been a lot of issues with it. We know last year, I believe, the Department or the Bureau of Motor Vehicles opted because of so many non-sufficient funds checks. There's kind of a 2-week lag time between the collections and when the money is reported to you all. So you might want to move up your cutoff date. And so we've got the dates up there. That's just a good option. And that way, as we get ready for settlement, your excise is ready. Especially if you're a county. I think I've talked to a couple counties where their treasurer's almost ready to certify collections for June settlement. So if your excise is done, that's one chore that you don't have to wait on anymore. And Brenda's favorite, the excise recon, going to be required. Just another reminder about using the low levy-free counties to include that equivalency rate when they apportion the taxes. But on that recon worksheet, the benefit of that is going to help you determine if there are any excise dollars that are sitting there in the county that should have been distributed. And we've been working mainly, with Brenda to try to help the counties with that, because if you find that you've got money that's sitting there, and of course at this point in time, who remembers how much went to what taxing district or should have? So we've got a spreadsheet. We can help you with that. I mean, I know that there's one county in particular that found hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, in this day and age, let's face it, we all need those additional dollars. And your units would really appreciate it, I'm sure. The county checklist that Brenda made that was 2 pages long, that's now 32, I think, pages. Sounds cumbersome, really isn't. And if you, and I say, and when you go through that checklist, when you send in your settlement, it's gone a balance, as long as you count everything. The last page of that checklist has a list of what is required to send in to us for settlement, and I think, if I remember correctly, it does not list on there something new this time. We're requiring you to send in out of your tax system the apportionment rates that you're using to apportion your taxes. The counties that have had those exempt, circuit breaker exempt funds have had to do this for a while, but we're trying to help prevent an issue of where tax bills maybe go out okay, but the dollars are apportioned using the prior year rates because somebody failed to get those updated. So that's one thing. Just know you're going to need to you're going to have to send in to us, which, yes, we will check them, and yes, that may take us a little bit longer to check your settlement. June settlement usually is pretty easy and pretty fast to check, but we're gonna have to go through that. And so that's on there, and I don't believe it's on there, but the Quietus Worksheet is also required, like we did last December. Let's see. I think a lot of you are familiar with this. If you settle more than 51 days after your collection date, the units are entitled to some interest. It's actually a pretty simple formula, and if you struggle with that, then just let us know. Not only will you need to give them the dollar amounts, but the breakdown by their fund as well, so they can make sure that they receipt it in their books to the proper fund. Fines and fees are due by June 30th, whether a June settlement is filed by June 30th or not. We're going to go over some of those fines and fees just briefly in a little bit, but the question tends to come up now that counties are settling earlier and earlier. Some of you may settle before May 31st, and the fines and fees form says your May 31st balance. Well, that's okay. Just send us your April 30th balance. It all works out, and it's really not a problem for anybody. These are the remittances that are due to the state before we give the final approval, quote unquote. The excise tax allocation, if you did refunds and there were any state, PTRC, and homestead, and also if you included the 2008 and prior delinquent tax collections. The state portion of that needs to come back. And actually, right on that form is a cell that tells you the exact amount that comes to the state. And sometimes it happens where a county will send in the state and the amount that goes into the rainy day fund. Matt, did you have a question? I'm sorry? Oh, am I? Well, imagine that. Tammy and I were just talking about how sometimes you get wound up in what you're doing and you forget to click. Mary Ann was supposed to throw something at me if I messed up. Are you? Okay, okay. Dora, did you catch that? I had somebody who told me that she wasn't going to be in here for my presentation, so I told her I'd pick on her. Okay. Thank you, Matt. I do appreciate it. The fines and fees remittance keeps growing, thanks to the boys. There's a list of some of them. Just a mention, your health department's probably aware, but effective July 1, the coroner's continuing education fee goes from $1.75 to $2. So you all might want to be aware of that. You might want to talk with your health department just to make sure that they're aware of it, that it does change, because that changed a few years ago, and out on that IC code, I think in 2018 it changes again, unless they make a change to the law. And there's some more, and we'll see at the bottom there, the Violent Crimes Victims Compensation Fund. That's one you've not seen before, and we'll go over that here in just a minute. And then next, we see up there, it says required 2 funds for proper accounting and segregation of state and local funds. It would help all of you and us, if you haven't checked, to make sure that on all of these that we have listed here, that you have 2 separate funds, one where you put the county portion and one where you put the state portion. And I jokingly say, and I do mean this, it's not just one county. We've had a lot of funds where the total amount has been remitted. And then guess what? We get to do a refund. And I really appreciate my job security by that. And thanks very much. But it's just better for us all if we can make sure that we have the 2 funds. This next one, let's see, forest restoration gets a little involved. Doesn't really hit that many of the counties. The Canine Research and Education Fund, that's from when the dog tax went away. And then some of the counties opted to continue that, and some of that money goes to Purdue. And then this first one here, the sex and violent offender registration fee, that seems to be the culprit. That's the one that we will tend to get more money than we should. And we do try to, as soon as you let us know, all we need to know is, okay, we sent you in this much, and this is how much we should have sent you in, here's the difference, and then we verify it, and we try to process it really quickly to get your money back. Okay? And then ineligible homestead credit civil penalty, that's the civil penalty that you added on those ineligible homesteads, and the state gets 1% of the civil penalty, and that's another issue where really, really crucial that you have 2 separate funds. And on that civil penalty, what that slide is actually saying, the 1% of the civil penalty, you know how when you give the taxpayer the 30 days and you've added that civil penalty to their bill and you send them notice and they come in and pay it and you receipt that money in, and 1% goes into the state's fund and the 99% goes into your county fund. And then let's say you're going to do your settlement on Monday and you're going to send in your fines and fees. Well, that 1% from that 30-day time frame is already sitting in the fund. But you've also certified to the treasurer, who's added on to the tax bill, the balance of those, the ones that didn't pay within the 30 days. and there's civil penalty. And you may not know until you're doing all of your settlement quietuses how much that was. You can just wait, put that quietus set into your fund, and then send that in at the next settlement. That's fine to do that. We had a lot of counties, because it was new, last year sent in the amount that was collected for the 30 days, and then 2 weeks later sent in the balance of what was collected on those amounts for after 30 days. If that is confusing to anybody, just find me and we can sit and talk about it. But it was something new, easy to kind of, oh, well, we didn't think about that would probably happen. So that should help you. Did I click the right way? Oh, Violent Crime Victims Assistance Fund. I lost my place. There it is. This is something that's kind of new, and that IC code, you may want to go back and look at it. It goes into great detail of when you have an offender in a work release program, what happens with their wages. And 10% of the gross earnings, after there was some other monies that were supposed to come out, is supposed to come to the state, and it's put into the Victims Compensation Fund. And so that's a new one this year, and you'll see it on your forms. I don't know that many counties have been collecting that. I haven't heard from many anyway. And thank you to the county that brought it to our attention. And now we'll start going over the forms that are required. Once again, for a lot of you, these are pretty basic. This list is also in the settlement instructions that are on the website that you all have been reading. And the 105, the 49 TC, 17 TC if you're doing refunds, the excise tax allocation worksheet, the excise recon sheet, 2008 and prior delinquency sheet, and the distribution rates listing. What I don't have on there is a Quietus worksheet, because if you want, you can send everything else in. Once your settlement's approved, you can send in your Quietus worksheet. I know sometimes that function works better to do it after you have everything else done, and you know that you're in balance with the treasurer, everything's gorgeous. Please make sure you use the county checklist. And remember, as we always say, we do the settlements in order. Even if there's an error and you have to go back, you're going to go right on the list at the bottom. We love you all, but we all love you all just the same amount. So nobody gets special treatment, sorry. And make sure, if you could, it helps us, if you have that section C completed before you send in our 105, because what happens after everything's ready, we print the 105. It's just an extra step if we have to go back. Because when you send us in another one, then we go back and we have to check everything just to make sure nothing changed between when you originally sent it in. I'm doing pretty well for doing this without my glasses, huh? The Quietus Worksheet. I've had a lot of people tell me what they really liked it. They liked the change that we made to it, and they find it really helpful. And it is just a good tool to use to make sure that if you do everything that sheet says, you are, at the end of the day, going to have a completely balanced settlement. You're going to balance with the treasurer, and life's going to be good. It is a required document. And we also have made a revision just late last week to it, because it wasn't really user-friendly for June's settlement. So we've changed some verbiage on there on the auditor additional sheet, where it dealt with all of the local income tax amounts, to, instead of referencing the reconciliation sheet that you do in December, it's referencing the columns on the 49 TC that it should also agree with. So that might make that sheet a little bit easier to do. And of course, once everything else is approved, your Quietus worksheet is approved and in balance, that's when we'll print your 105s and send them to you for the auditor's signature and you send back one signed copy of that to us, and then we send your cute little settlement approval letter. I think there's at least one software vendor that's created a Quietus Worksheet, and we had decided last year, the first time that we required this, that if they have that, we'll still accept it. But if they don't, we would prefer you use our sheet. And you know, it basically is going to say, do I balance with the treasurer or not? I used to always think of settlement as kind of a three-step process. You've got your beginning, then you send everything in, you get it approved, and then you still have to balance with the treasurer again when all those quietuses are posted. And what is the plural of quietus? Is it quieti? It's actually quietus. And it also, especially on that additional auditors, additional treasurer, it gives you direction. What do I do with that money? What do I do with that COET homestead money that I needed more? Well, you write a check out of the COET fund. What do I do with the excess COET? Well, you quietus it into your COET homestead fund. And as much as I appreciate it, I don't really want the money sent in. Might help me make my house payment, but I really would rather not have it. So, CVET. Y'all just got that not too long ago. And hopefully, based on the questions we've been getting, which is great, you've all been working diligently on that, and all the counties but one should have distributed to your units by now. Although technically, you do have more time. If it were me, I'd just want it off my desk. And that county is working really diligently, and they're just going to be caught up before you know it. So that's a good thing. And if you haven't started it, the worksheets that we have with the amounts broken down by unit are out on our website, and that tells you there how to find them. This is just a description of how that started back in 2000. And I'm going to mention this again a little bit, but basically if a unit, well, as I recall, the units, the township assessors had to report their commercial vehicle excise back at that time, and if they didn't, they were never, ever, ever going to get this. If you also have some new units of government out there, they probably won't get any of this money either because they didn't exist then. Okay, the glasses are going to have to come on. You get 2 distributions a year, one in May, one in December. It's divided in half. And that goes on to explain how the units distribution was calculated. And in the past, for those that have been around a while, remember this used to be a guaranteed amount that it would grow every year, and it's no longer that way. It's based on the collections. And our office determines that breakdown every year and provide those worksheets for you. We're always happy to answer your questions on that. And if the county, well, on those sheets, we've already backed out the welfare and school allocation amounts, so you don't have to remit any money back to the state. The CVET distribution for the taxing units is allocated to the funds within the taxing unit with the current property tax rates. You don't ever want to distribute that money with like a prior year rates because it's going to allocate the money incorrectly. So obviously you can't distribute it until you have current year rates. And once again, you notice we keep harping on this, but just to be on the safe side, operating levy-free counties, you have to use that equivalency rate that's out on the DLGF website. You can get those and use, it's the same that you do for your excise tax that you're distributing with settlement. And now we get into some of the fun questions. If a township has no civil fund rates this year, but CVET there's an amount showing on your CVET report for the township civil funds. That civil amount is then just given to the township to put into their general fund. Another one, if the township has no fire fund rates, but CVET has an amount for fire funds, the CVET township fire amount is distributed to the township fire fund. Fire territories. A lot of questions on these, and Brenda and I have decided that whoever came up with fire protection districts and fire territories, which have to be handled differently, should be knocked into next week. It is confusing for those of you that have it. And so we're trying to, in the future, we're going to change the instructions to give a little more direction. We added some, but it's obvious we need to give a little more direction on that. So the fire territory rates, which a fire territory is made up, you have a providing unit, and then you have participating units. And typically the providing unit, in a lot of cases, is the city or town, and then you'll have several townships that may be a part of that fire territory, and they are referred to as the participating units. Okay? The rates are included in the allocation of CVET for the providing taxing unit and each participating taxing unit. So you may have a township that still has, they would still have a rate, but that money is actually going to end up at the providing unit. But you still calculate that breakdown and send the money to the township. The township will put it in their fire fund. They need to keep that fire fund, and then they will, based on their board decision, the board then decides, okay, now we send the money on to the providing unit. Direction in the past wasn't always that way, but Dan's had a discussion with DLGF, I believe, and the State Board of Accounts, and this is the procedure. Now, where are we at here? If no township CVET fire amount is listed, there is no CVET distribution to the fire territory. And we have that. You know, we have some out there where, because nothing existed back when CVET first started, there is no dollar amount out there for fire. Okay? And this is where, at the bottom, I talked about the total of the CVET allocations is distributed to the providing taxing unit of the fire territory for the fire territory. You don't do that. You distribute the money to, in this case, the township. Then the township board decides, and they will instruct their clerk to send the money on to them. And if they have any issues with that, I know we had that with one county, that feel free to contact us. Now here we have the fire district. And a fire district is a taxing unit. The definition of a taxing unit is an entity which has the power to impose ad valorem property taxes, which basically means property-based or value-based property taxes. In the case of a fire district, and how you can tell, if you go out to your abstract and look out in the special district section, is where you'll see that. You probably know that, but that's how I look. I go out to there to see if you have one. They have their own tax rate. And if this fire district, in the case of some counties, this has happened, this fire district was created within the last couple of years. It wasn't there when CVET started, so it will never, ever receive CVET unless there's a change in the law. In which case, that CVET fire amount goes to the township general fund. And that's why I say, I know this is confusing, and we're going to try to put it all in one document in your instructions. Because not only does this affect CVET, it affects FIT as well. And the rules are basically the same. And I have done here, this is the slide where I was going to say those legislators ought to be knocked into next week. We're going to go through this pretty quickly because, like I said, a lot of this is the same. FIT now, FIT and CVET is pretty much treated the same, other than it started back in 1989, I believe. DLGF has the worksheets out under their website and the county-specific information. We processed it early in May. And you're going to use those worksheets for the totals to calculate your distributions, and those need to be done by June settlement. And like I said, I'm going to kind of flip through these slides because it is identical to the CVET with the fire territory and the fire districts. Once again, the money goes to, in the case of a fire territory, it goes to the township, and then the township board requires their clerk to send the money on to the providing unit. And the same for fire districts. And we're done with that. Yay. And the next thing you guys have on your agenda are budgets, right? And you need all those wonderful estimates. Well, once again, the 2013 riverboat wagering tax revenue sharing, that's going to happen. You'll get that money in August. The $33 million will go to the counties who do not have a riverboat. And Dan has a wonderful spreadsheet. You will get that spreadsheet that gives you the ratio and the proportional amount for each unit. Basically, it's allocated based on population, except Marion County, their calculation is a little bit different. You can use that money for any governmental purpose appropriated by the fiscal body, and it cannot reduce the max levy or property tax levy. Revenue estimates, we'll be emailing those by mid-June for your 2014 budget revenue estimate. Formulas for cigarette tax, ABC gallonage, MBH local road street, MBH 1 and 2, and the riverboat revenue sharing. Not only will you, for what you'll get in August, but then estimates for the following year. We ask you this all the time. Please, please, please provide those to your cities and towns and your highway department. We do keep track of a lot of the cities and towns' email addresses. We have those in our address book, but not all. So it's crucial that you provide those to your cities and towns and your highway department. We don't keep track of the highway department emails at all. And we'll get a few calls. So if you could help us out with that, that would be amazing. Thank you. EFT deposits, as we know, everybody a few years ago got on the board with that. We do send our payments that are processed through our office by EFT or ACH. All of ours will appear on your bank statement as Auditor of State Payables. So if you see that and you didn't get an email notification, give us a holler and we can help you out with that. If it's another agency, it won't say that. We can help you determine that, but if you do know what agency sent that money to you, then if you can just look on that list we've provided to you in the past, agency contacts, or contact us and we'll get you with the person that can help you identify what that money's for. I think NDOT is notorious for not having a remittance message, as I recall. We get a lot of calls on those. Federal money, you're not going to receive an ACH, but whenever the federal government sends you money, typically you will see these deposit symbols on your bank statement. And those are some phone numbers you can contact people if you don't know what that money's for. And my favorite topic, having us receive money from you by ACH. Started in November of 2011. We've been encouraging the counties. Not only does it save you money, it's just easier, quite honestly. We currently have 17 counties, and I talked to another county yesterday who wants to get on board, so I could say we're up to 18 counties. And we have an enrollment form. You just send me an email and tell me, or Brenda or Dan, that you want to participate in that. We have a form that has our routing number and has Dan's signature and all that, so you can use to provide to your bank. You may have, or your bank may have, your own form. Just get it to us, we can get it filled out. We do ask on our form, there's a portion up there for you to fill out, and we ask you to send it back to us just so that we know, because as we're getting started, we tell you, please notify us when you're sending us money and tell us what it's for, so we know where to receipt it. If we get one and we don't have any clue who it's from, then we can't do that. And as long as I remember to check my spam filter in case the email ended up there, because that happened once, Hendricks, then we can get the money receipted in. If we have a list of who we know could be sending in money, then I can shoot out an email and say, hey, we received this money. Anybody know what it's for? So it's very helpful. And we'd like to encourage you to do that. It's just some counties are slowly moving into that. It took me 10 years to pay bills online, so I understand. But it does work really well, and we're actually opening it up to your county clerks to be able to do that as well. You guys have participated more than them, just saying. These are a list of payments. Basically, anything that has to come to the auditor state's office, you can send by ACH. And that's just a brief list. Things that you can't send to us, the examination of records payments, go to State Board of Accounts. So you would still need to issue a check to them and send it over to them. Payments to other agencies. Recently, wasn't there some kind of a payment you guys had to make to the budget agency for some kind of testing, whether it's drug testing or something like that? I know we were receiving some checks that were coming to us, but there was actually for the budget agency. So that's another thing too. Just look on your remittance forms if you get one from an agency and see where that goes. We can always forward it, but it gets deposited faster that way. And yes, as I said, we need to know the amount, we need to know what it's for. If, like in the case of settlement, where you're sending in your excise allocation plus some other monies, fines and fees, we need to know how much is what. So that's helpful. Other maybe not so interesting items. Brenda asked me to remind everybody, we don't print the abstract anymore until we hear from DLGF that the data is considered compliant. So even though we've gone ahead and sent you the cover sheets and had you sign them and send them back, we hold on to it. We don't print them because, as we know, any of the counties that have had issues with compliancy, if we've already printed it, guess what? You guys refile it, we have to reprint, and that paper's this big, as you know, and a little pricey. And we really hope that our printer doesn't go on us ever again because we get really backed up. Let's see, Form 22s. We don't receive Form 22s unless it's for money that's being remitted to the auditor. So the copies of the Form 22s, one copy goes to DLGF. And once again, exam of records, send that payment to the State Board of Accounts. Even though the check's made out to the Treasurer State, the money is remitted to the State Board of Accounts. And this was an interesting question that we've had. When you have, you're basically forgiving taxes. You're taking those off of their tax liability, sometimes due to bankruptcy. Sometimes those properties that you've tried to sell, the county takes deed to it, so you write off the taxes. You do not need to account for the tax credits on those. We don't want the state, if it goes back that far, we don't want the state money back. Okay, because those taxes weren't wrong. They were due. That assessment was valid. So it's not a situation of an assessment change. Those you do need to account for. But when it's forgiving taxes for whatever reason, and I have to tell you, I worked at the county for 10 years before I knew this, that we don't have to account for that, which saves for the person that does those a lot of work. Okay? And yeah, typically it's due to bankruptcy, court orders, property deeded to the county, property deeded to a city or other unit of government. The credit dollars are only reduced or adjusted when it's because of an assessment change. The updated wheel and surtax factors for those counties that have that were sent, was it late last week? Early this week? We ask to, just as you all are swamped and get busy, we do too, so please look at those and make sure. I had a question on one. We found the answer because from the Census Bureau went out and had corrected some numbers, and it changed one of their units by 2 people. But we all know we like for it to be accurate. Whatever else did I forget? On the excise tax allocation worksheet, we're going to add a column on the left. So if you want, you can put your district numbers on there. We've had that request in the past. We didn't act on it, although believe we intended to. And so when we get back to the office, we're going to be working on those, and we'll send them to you. So if you haven't started working on that yet, or you can still use the other one, but I know a lot of counties have asked for this. And then in the future, we'll just make sure that those districts are on there. Okay. And the last thing was something Dan has asked me to remind everybody. We were going to say just settlements and abstracts, but really all communications with our office should be copied to all 3 of us, Dan, Brenda, and I. We are a team, and even though we sit in cubicles and we're close to each other, sometimes we don't really know what the other person's doing as we go through the year and through the day.